Attention passengers. This is your co-pilot speaking. Your pilot is black mind, so you are not going blind and there is no power failure. You are merely experiencing the immense blackness of his proximity, and when you hear his voice, you and the cabin will get even darker than you are currently. We will be cruising at the speed equal to light, because the one other thing that travels equally fast is darkness. Your loved ones awaiting your arrival may not recognize you at first sight. This is normal. Simply tell them about the pilot, and they will understand. We will taxi to the runway now, so please buckle up and prepare for a high-speed departure. Thank you for choosing Jet Black Airways, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. We hope you keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Justice forever.
What up, though? So I appreciate you all really coming through and answering my question about the need for rite of passage. And there's a reason why I posted the question about the need for rite of passage from Black boys to become men shortly after posting what I posted about my former student that said it's not important to bring notebooks and stuff to class. The student that brought this in is nicknamed Abogado, and that is the Spanish word for lawyer. He's the one student in the class that's about to major in law, and he actually would come to the class and say some things in Spanish to me. He would learn some phrases in Spanish and then say them to me. Now, he mispronounced a few words and it could change the meaning, but for the most part, I would gather what he said, and sometimes I wasn't sure, and I would say, wait, did that N, when you said manana, did the first N have a line over it? He said, yes. And I said, okay, mañana. Mañana. I said, okay, all right, yeah. Now say that again. Nos vemos mañana si Dios quiere. What does that show you? That shows you his capacity. See, yesterday the results came in for the class. They took their final exams again, so their final grades were recalculated based on their second final exam scores, not the first. And they failed again, by roughly the same margins. The overall performance was the same. Here's the funny thing. The test was made a bit harder so that they could not cheat. So questions were asked about a slightly different theme so that they could not memorize vocabulary for it. And they still did the same, which means they have the capacity. They just weren't willing to actually apply themselves. They proved this. I don't think the story is over. I don't think it's ever going to be over. They're going to fight tooth and nail to try to get what they want, which is to pass and go to the core curriculum without actually studying and repeating the level. They're going to try that. But what I want you guys to understand is that they proved the case against themselves. I never asserted that they could not do better. I always told my superiors at work, they can. They have the capacity. They're just not willing to apply themselves and train themselves according to what I've told them. See, with language, the teacher will tell you the right information, but then you repeat it and practice it so that it becomes part of your repertoire, because the ability to speak like an adult involves subconscious and conscious parts of the brain at the same time. Your brain, when you speak in your own first language, your parents' language, your brain is thinking consciously about the topic, but the subconscious part of the brain is what is putting the sentences together, because the subconscious part of the brain, without telling you consciously, knows the rules of grammar for your language. It knows how to not use a noun as a verb and how to not use a verb as a noun unless it has received input from that first language that you can do that. Normally, that has to go through parts of the brain that deal with emotion and the sense of humor, because that's not formally correct. So a subconscious part of the brain has to filter out, okay, this is something that other native speakers will understand an innovation and what you actually mean. They would understand as a new way to express what you mean. Okay, this would not even make sense to them. Don't even say that. So my students proved that they have the capacity, but that they would not train themselves so that the subconscious mind could then put the sentences together for them in a new language. They would not practice it. Because they would not actually do the work on their own brains, they failed twice. No student that failed the first time passed the second time. None. I do not understand what that's about. I don't even care what the reason is. They set themselves up. They did this to themselves. I didn't do this to them. I wouldn't do it to them. I have no reason to. They held themselves back, and it was a big joke to them. So I say to you this for a reason. In a messaging app, Abogado sent that to me. This was weeks ago. He was upset because I kept telling the students, if you do not bring these things and these means and then practice them at home, you are not going to get better. You're not going to reach the level you have to reach in order to pass the class. Not according to how I feel, but according to the system of the university. But if you don't write these things down, then you're not going to be able to study them and review them at home. And typing them into a phone is not going to help you. I know it won't. I know that doesn't work because, for the most part, people get into the longest arguments on their phones, not their laptops. Ask me how I know. Full-size keyboard versus a little bitty-ass phone keyboard that's going to change the spelling if you're correct. If you're typing correctly, it'll change the spelling. And then you post it and it goes through. You can't hardly spell correctly. I've told the students before, and they think I'm making this stuff up for some odd reason. And then they walk in with their phones, no pen. A lot of them have a pen that they put in the front pocket of their robes. Usually there's a front left pocket on the robe. They got a pen, and the pen is a decoration. I'm not joking. I don't even ask them to use that pen. They will sit up and pat their pockets and say, does someone have a pen? They got a pen in their front pocket, and everybody knows it's a decorative pen. A decorative pen. I wish I was making this up. The pen is stronger than the sword, according to a proverb, but it still needs ink. They need a sort of orientation into manhood. I don't think that they need rituals or rites of passage, but here's the thing I want you to understand. The rite of passage that I'm talking about is something that we've already had a lot of in many societies in Africa. The men have rites of passage in different cases. Now, Islamically speaking, there's not some rite of passage to go through to be a man. You're going to be held accountable when you reach the age of accountability, whether you go through a rite of passage or not. That's it. If your mind is stable and you're not retarded or mentally ill of some sort, and you reach that age of accountability, guess what, buddy? You're now just as accountable and responsible as a man. So therefore, the privileges of manhood are not going to be withheld from you because that would be unfair. You can't justify that. You do wrong, you're punished like a man. You don't get to be held back away from certain things that are some of the rights of manhood. I shouldn't say privileges. I should have said rights the first time, but that's not going to happen in Islam. Now, I say in Islam like it's a place or a location. But in the religion itself, that's not how that works. And I will admit that societies tend to always fall short of the ideal. We're not an exception when it comes down to that. So I'm not going to sit up and say that there's a place you go to and this is going to be the case. For the most part, where I live, it's like that. The opportunities are still, for the most part, going to be the same. If a man is shut out of the same opportunities as other men because of something wrong with his mind, then he's not accountable like them. And that's the end of it. That's just all there is to it. That's fair. Fair is fair. But I wanted you all to think about this for a little while, and now I'm going to go ahead and tell you. We black men actually don't need a rite of passage. We have plenty of them on the continent. And the funny thing is that sometimes the women have theirs and the men have theirs, and sometimes it's just the men that have theirs. Let me tell you something about how the men have theirs, though, where the problem comes in with that. There's something about women in our continent that makes them prone to hybristophilia and hyper macho stances and standards for men to meet. I don't fully understand it, but there's something about them that makes them this way. And of course, every culture is not going to be that way. That's impossible. There are too many of them. But you will see a prevalence of this. You'll notice that you hear about this too damn often on the continent. Now, I one time saw something that I don't think was correct in a textbook, long time ago. Showed a bare-breasted woman in Somalia. I was like, I don't believe that. But then I found out that there was a time in its history when Islam was pretty much just something you inherited from your parents. You didn't really think about it, so nobody was really taking it that seriously. That did exist. And I'm talking in the 1900s. That was an issue. And so this lady was about to get married, and the man she was going to marry had never killed anybody, and she was upset about it. Can you imagine that? I was in high school when I saw this in a textbook, and I was doing a report on how certain cultures actually promoted violence. And that is because I just had 3 fights in 1 year with my own race after going 3 years with no fights, neither with white boys nor us. But every time somebody wanted to fight, it was one of my own. One time, a white guy tried to fight, and another white guy jumped in before I could and said, "Leave him alone or you're dead." I was like, yo, I didn't even have time to respond to this dude. And when I went to the guy to challenge me later, I said, "What's happening, bro?" He apologized. He stuck his hand and he said, I had a bad temper and I'm wrong and I'm sorry. I wasn't getting that from my own kind. So after a 1 year stretch with 3 fights with my own kind, after growing up pro-black and I want to fight my own kind, I did this as a book report for my English class. Not as a book report, but as a type of research paper for my English class, because the English teacher was trying to teach us about this. So I did the subject and I was like, this is messed up, man. But there was information on it. In my little Gulf Coast town's county library, there was information about this. Now, I don't know if it was true when I saw about this bare-breasted woman that the textbook said was in some village in Somalia mad because she was engaged to a man that hadn't killed anybody. Now I look back and I don't know whether to believe it or not. I'm not sure. I can't tell. Because of what I know about Somali culture and what I know about other African cultures. They may have been in some part of the continent, or more likely Papua New Guinea, which is not in Africa, because that was covered in the book. I'm sorry, in the books that I read. That was covered too. There were tribes there where they would call a man worthless if he hadn't killed anybody. Can you imagine that? But there's something, oh, by the way, in New Guinea, Papua New Guinea and West Papua, which is part of Indonesia, they black too. And they women got attitudes. I know they do because I've seen exposés on. I've seen a lot of documentaries on them. They got attitudes. The men are warlike, and the women are just full of attitude when it comes to their men. Just steady, full of attitude. Always got some flip to say to their men, and even to their own little boys or to their own sons. I'm hungry. You always hungry. You ate the last potato already. I wish I could make this up. Now, in those societies, there are times when they have rites of passage in order for boys to become men and for girls to become women, or for boys to become men. They got stuff like that. What I'm going to tell you now is the answer. For we men, we black males who go from boys to men, life itself takes care of these things. And in order to understand the lessons of life, there is also another mechanism, and we tend to have that already. And that is that I don't like to use the term mentor because of the name of the character mentor, from whom the verb came, but counsel and advise. We black men tend to counsel and advise and share knowledge with whoever's younger than us and is about to come up through the same thing. We understand the value of the wisdom of the elder and their experience. Likewise, we also understand the necessity of not abusing that and misguiding the young ones. I'm not saying we always excel in it, but we do understand that that's an important principle. Don't abuse your experience and misguide the young ones. What kind of leader are you? Oftentimes when we have these rites of passage, it's the women that are saying that we need them. And the men who listen to the women turn around and say, yeah, we need a rite of passage. Actually, we don't necessarily need a rite of passage we don't already have. If we do have one, it's always something that comes from the interest of the women who can't teach us how to be men anyway. Shouts out to the Roger Report Live. He talked about that yesterday. Your manhood cannot rest on the approval of women. Now, they may have something to do with it, but can you afford for your manhood to your real manhood to rest on the approval of women? You can't afford that in a good situation. Do you think you can afford that in a situation like in the Western Hemisphere where we're really lost? You can't afford that back on the continent. I just told you about that. Because who are the women going to approve of as being real men? Men who get themselves killed. That's who. You let the Messiah women have their way, you got to go kill a lion. Well, now lions are endangered. But you got to go and kill anyway because that's tradition. It'll be the men were the ones that had to sit up and say, wait a minute, there aren't that many lions left anymore. Now, if they're not messing with our cattle and they ain't messing with us, we're going to do away with that. Okay, so the boys got to go out and live by themselves for a year, take care of themselves. Okay, that's an experience for them. I don't think that's fair because a lot of them don't come back. They should be allowed to live in groups where they can cooperate and look out for each other. Help each other out for a year. They should be allowed to do that. And they should be allowed to take with them whatever they owned before. They should be the ones that are allowed. That should be, if there's going to be a sort of manhood training, see, we don't necessarily need a rite of passage and just a bunch of rituals. That may help, they may not. But we would need something that is focused on training, and we already have some of that. We, as men, simply need to think more about how you counsel someone and how you properly advise someone. And for the most part, we tend to do that. It is the women that need the same thing regarding how to be women. And whereas we don't need to take their input per se, because we already care about them. in terms of what it takes for us to be men. We can't let that rest on their approval. We're already responsible for looking out for them and protecting them. So we cannot afford to let them put too much input into this, but we still get to have input to put in to what it takes for the women. What's the reason? Because now we know that we love them and they don't love us. We care about them and they don't care about us. We're in love and they're in business. And when they are in love, because there's some man that they do love, when they are in love, that may or may not mean much. It should, ideally speaking, but we already know they're more prone to fall in love with men that are no good. And they think that's okay. They think they see that as like that's just how it is in life. The heart want what it want. Why does it always want what's evil? When it comes to their hearts, why does it always want what's evil? What's violent? What's hybristophilic? What goes out and tries to kill a lion? You know that Islamically speaking, we're not allowed to go and hunt them for no reason. When I said that this was a solution for us, I wasn't making that up. I've always said it. I saw the evidence for it. That's why I could tell you that we're not allowed to go and hunt a lion. We can't eat the lion. The meat's not good for us. The hormones are not that good for us. And hormones go into every cell in the body. That's their nature. That's what they're designed to do. Receptors are on certain cells, but the hormones themselves can go into any cell in the body. So the ones that cause the predators to be aggressive, we already make because we're also meat eaters. So it's actually nutritionally and hormonally harmful to us to consume predators. We can't eat the lions if we have another choice, as a backup, last resort. That's different. But you got options in terms of what you're eating. No, we can't do that. So just go out and hunt a lion that was not doing anything to bother any of us. For what? What the hell for? Now, are you allowed to bully lions out of one of their kills? Well, they see that they could do that to you. So yeah, go ahead. I guess. I don't even know what the ruling is on that, but I'm saying that you're not, at least as far as the lion concerns, might makes right. But you go and hunt a lion as a trophy. You're not allowed to do that in Islam. You're not allowed to hunt a deer as a trophy. You hunt to eat or to protect. That's the deal. That is why you kill even an animal. And if it's domesticated, there are rules about how you can slaughter it when you're about to eat it. And then you can use the other parts of it. These are rules. They're in the faith itself. They're in the revelation. A lot of them are actually in the book itself with further explanations by the prophet. Peace and prayers be to him. So a lot of the Messiah women hope that men don't become Muslim. I'm sure there's such a thing as a Messiah Muslim somewhere, but I bet you a lot of the women hope the men don't become Muslim because they don't want the men saying, no. I can't just go and kill a lion that ain't doing nothing to nobody. They got a problem with that. We're not the ones that need it. And we haven't been for a long time. We've been out here trying to be super tough, Superman, all this stuff. Even in our own cultures back home, we've been trying to be the supermen that these sisters want. For what? What do they have to be? You know what they do? Flog themselves. And the Hamar tribe, the Hamir tribe in Ethiopia, and I think in parts of South Sudan, that's what they do. They flog themselves. The women will flog themselves to emotionally blackmail their brothers and their sons into going through the humiliation ritual of having to jump over the back of a cow that has been smeared slick with boo-boo and not fall. And they can only try once a year to qualify for manhood. So she beats herself on her back, which you're not supposed to do. I mean, how African is that? Oh, I'm going to flog myself and abuse myself. We naturally know that we black folks have better sense than that. They do it anyway. What that tell you? so that the man is emotionally blackmailed into having to jump clear over the back of. What that got to do with what kind of husband is he's going to be? We don't need these anymore. And that's one thing I would tell you, that we have every right to go back to the continent and tell those men, oh, you got this rite of passage before you qualify to be a man and be married. Guess what? You don't owe the women that. You do owe them if you marry them. You owe them certain things that husbands or wives, but that's not one of them. Some of them have said, well, you got to make sure that a woman doesn't marry a man that's a coward. Okay, well, fine. Now, let's put the women to the same test. Before she has your kid and you willing to die in her defense, is she willing to die in defense of the baby? Because a lot of women won't. A lot of them stop and think, well, you know what? I can sacrifice the baby because I can have another baby now that the husband's gone and can't protect me. And many of them will put self-preservation first. Many of them won't. It could go either way. Just like for a man, it could go either way. Okay, well, here's the deal then. Since I got to protect her and I'm willing to do it, and she wants to make sure, okay, so she wants me to go out in the woods and fight a damn leopard. Okay. What the F is she going to do? If I got to do that, how about some of you dress as a leopard and attack her one night? Put her in charge of babysitting somebody, dress as a leopard, and scare the hell out of her during the night when she can't really see that well. Does she sacrifice the baby, or does she die, or does she get ready to die in defense of the baby? See, we don't think that way, and that's the problem with us. We don't need another rite of passage in order to become a man. The world is already enough of it. Efficacy and functionality in this world is the rite, and the passage itself is the world. If there's some sort of proof of manhood needed, we done already survived more than that proof because we've had double oppressors. We've had the internal one and the external one. And for some of you guys, my heart really breaks because for some of you guys, the internal one was not only someone from our race, but related to you by blood, your own moms and aunts. And my heart goes out to y'all because I didn't have to deal with that. Stuff my mom couldn't explain, she at least tried. I got one of them loving, loyal moms. If I were ever going to beg for you all on Cash App for any reason, I would beg for you all for an extra plane ticket back to the States to visit her another time a year. But I got the same kind of dad, too. I've had it both ways. Really loving parents, and thank God they're still alive. May he guide them and bless them. I can't sit up and say that I understand this, but you guys have been through that. That counts for something. And many of you guys, after going through a severe deep cut like that, you still have the decency to not bleed on the people that didn't cut you. Not only on the people that didn't cut you, you have the decency to not even bleed on other women that didn't cut you. You refuse to do that. Some of you been done wrong by your moms and your wives and your fiancés. You refuse to let them go through any of the hurt and the harm that you went through. You know, Manosphere Hall of Fame said that he rarely met an intelligent person that wasn't black. And I thought about it and I realized in the U.S., I've met them, but in the U.S., it was pretty rare. It was like they were intelligent for whatever was going to make them their money, but they didn't really have to practice their wisdom and intelligence when it came down to just basic morality. I shouldn't say basic, but the advanced morality that we tend to have as long as we ain't no stereotypical jigaboos. You know that we have oftentimes had to go through some of the worst mothering on the planet to be as dysfunctional as other people who have generally had better mothers. Did you realize that? Oh, I'm witnessing that right in mother cuss word now. I'm seeing that. Seeing these guys here with, generally speaking, some good moms. As far as I can make out, as far as I can tell. But their dysfunction is horrendous. When it comes down to academics and an actual work ethic, oh, their dysfunction is horrendous. I just taught 23 of them and 21 proved it by failing. And not all of them were ill-behaved either. When I would meet African-American students that were this doggone bad, academically speaking, you know what would happen to them? They would fail. And not only that, but they didn't even feel entitled to pass. They didn't feel like they were entitled to pass. They failed, they failed. One thing they didn't do was go and pitch a fit and pitch a bitch somewhere because they failed. They failed. I'm going to have to repeat this grade. Okay. That's what it was. These kids here, better moms, won't do half the work, still feel entitled to pass, and will do any and everything except effing study to pass. And this is not just where I teach now. They don't really need a rite of passage. They need training. And it's in the religion, so they need to start looking into the parts of their religion that address this sort of thing, if anything. They don't need a rite of passage or a ritual. That's not necessary. They need training. They need counseling. They need to focus on this. So we damn sure don't need it. Does Boom Chic need it? Well, if she does, it needs to be something that we come up with. The women and the men should be in charge of their little rites of passage in order to become women. Because if not, and it's only the women in charge, all they're going to do is teach each other how to take advantage of men. I hope this explains it. Thank you for listening as always. Black heart, black mind, black out, black heterosexual, non-select male power because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day. Thank you for flying with us again here on Jet Black Airways, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever.